J, congratulations on the racer.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you. Very, very nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry that it didn't showcase at the South by Southwest here in the United States. So
that's a sore point.
but it's out now, so that's a great thing.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and it's hopefully. I mean, it's a very funny time, as you can imagine, to release a film. It's been difficult to actually find cinemas and places to put it into cinemas, like New York and and California. There's no cinemas open, so they can't put it in there. So it's playing in 5 cinemas in Salt Lake City.
Is it playing in Europe, like where the Tour de France is happened?
Yeah, it was playing in Belgium. It was released in Belgium, and it comes out on the 1st of October in Holland and Netherlands, but it won't come out in Ireland or Britain until early next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, territory by territory. That's how they do it. They're all separate territories. It's like nobody buys it for the whole of Europe unless it's a studio picture, and then they can they can control that. But so it's territory by territory.
Absolutely. So, Kieron, tell me where the original idea came from for the racer. What actually sparked you to do this movie?
Okay, so 22 years ago, I was living in a place in the centre of Dublin, and I parked my car outside my apartment, which was at the top of one of these large Georgian buildings that are all over Dublin. And I came down the next morning, and there was a note on my car that told me I wasn't allowed to park my car there because the Tour de France was going to be coming through town. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm quite happy to move my car for that reason. That's no problem at all. So I ended up watching the Tour de France from my apartment and going down onto this and seeing the whole spectacle of the thing. And it was pretty fascinating. And, it was kind of like the most sophisticated, coolest, sexiest sport had arrived in Ireland. All of these guys dressed in these crazy outfits, where 200 of them had descended upon the capital, and were going to, and it had never happened before. It had never come to Ireland before. It had never left mainland Europe before, because it used to be exclusively France, but then they used to go into Italy a little bit, or Spain a little bit, or Belgium or Holland or whatever. And so this is the first time it ever came across water to us. And it was a big deal, actually, and it felt like just like the coolest sport ever. And I knew little or nothing about it. And then a few years later, some stories started to come out about what was really going on in Ireland in the hotel rooms back then, and a book was written. I think it was called "The End of the Road." And at one stage they thought that the Tour de France was going to be over, because it was so riddled with drugs, that they thought that was it, it's finished. And then I just heard stories about, there was a guy that my co-writer, Kieron Cassidy, he heard stories about riders running up and down the corridors of the hotel at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And they were wondering, what the hell was this? What kind of training is this? 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, running up and down the corridors, the hotel corridors. And it turns out that they reckon that it was that they'd taken EPO, and that they had to keep their heart rate up. So that's why they were running up and down the corridors, because they were afraid that if they were to rest, it would stop. And there was also bikes in the rooms on rollers, a lot of the rooms, which was kind of unusual that you put a bike on rollers in a room. It's not in a hotel room. So they started doing research and discovered that there's most likely, nobody was definitely going to confirm this, because if you confirm it, then you're admitting the guilt of it, right? But that they were getting on the bikes in the middle of the night to keep their heart rates up. And I found that fascinating. But I also, with Kieron, my co-writer, we were both also interested in telling the story of not the champion, but the person who supports the champion, the second in command, the second fiddle, the domestique. Because there's been lots of stories about champions in various kinds of sports, but never anyone about somebody who does an awful lot of hard work and never gets any praise or glory from it at all. And I found that interesting. So that's where it all kind of came from.
So many moving parts to your one story here, which is actually fascinating, because I actually watched one race one time, and I think I told somebody it was like waiting around for 3 hours just to watch them ride by for 10 seconds.
It's unreal. I mean, it's not the best sport to go and I don't know, the French love to do it, but it's just that, isn't it? Zoom, zoom, zoom. And then you go, is that it? Is that all we do? You know what I mean? But the French have it down to a fine art. They go and they have a picnic by the side of the road, and they pick a place where they're going up a mountain. So they're slower going up, and they're sort of like in dribs and drabs going up, so they get to see them a bit more. They dress up in costumes and cheer them on and paint stuff on the road, and they make quite a party out of the whole thing, you know what I mean? But we in Ireland didn't know how to do that, you know what I mean? So it was a different experience, you know.
Now I do want to talk about one scene where someone actually walks into the road. Does that actually can happen? Because I thought they actually have like protocols to prevent something like that.
They may do now, but actually, no, I watched the tour. I was watching the tour, which is just finished the other day, and they were going up mountains, and either side of the road, the riders are running alongside them. They had flags. They were, giving them stuff if they wanted a drink or something like that. They were in close contact. Now, a lot of them were wearing masks, which was pretty good. They were all kind of COVID masked up, but there was no kind of barriers or anything like that to stop them getting close to the riders. Anything could have happened, and does. And if you go onto YouTube and you'll see, if you just key in fans getting in the way of riders on the Tour de France, there's a whole succession of videos where there's even cases where riders punch them. They punch them out of the way, because they hate them. They're impeding their journey. So, yeah. So yes, to answer your question, easily that could happen. Absolutely, yeah.
Wow. How much research did you get into the EPO? Because I know nothing about EPO until I actually watched this movie. All I knew is that there were drugs, but there wasn't like any specifics that a regular person like myself would research into. So how much research did you do?
Well, I didn't take any. I didn't try it out or anything like that. I've got to say that first of all. But I met people who have taken it, and I mean it's actually in the right control. It's a very good drug. It's a very good when it's used for what it's supposed to be used for. But this is abuse, really, what these guys are doing with it. And the thing about it is, it increases the amount of red oxygen in your blood system, right? So, the blood moves around quicker. And but when you're taking it and you're exercising, your heart rate is up to pump the blood. It thickens the blood quite a bit, and it has to push the blood around your system. So when your heart is not pumping, and it starts to slow down, it slows down and slows down. And a lot of people at the time, a lot of riders at the time, there's about 20 of them, they kind of went to bed and never woke up. Because the heart. Yeah, that's why these guys were running up and down the corridors and on these bikes in the Tour de France in 1998. Because there was lots of stories about people just literally, and they'd be healthy guys, and they'd go to bed, and they wouldn't. The heart would just slowly go down, and just stop, and they wouldn't wake up. So that's all absolutely true. And the research I did, I spoke to doctors, I spoke to riders, I read an awful lot of books, and there's an awful lot of speculation. There's an awful lot of conjecture. There are, when I spoke to some riders that were in the Tour de France in 1998, and I sort of told them the scenario I described the scenario, and I asked for their opinion on it. They were very reluctant to give me any opinion one way or the other, because if they were to say, yeah, that sounds realistic to me, that sounds like what happened, that means that they're implicating themselves and saying, yes, that went on, and they're never going to do that. There's an omerta in the world of cycling. So they didn't say one way or the other whether it was right or not. They're not going to implicate themselves.
Wow.
So it was a little bit.
Well, good thing you weren't making a documentary. You were making a fictional film.
I mean, maybe someday Lance Armstrong might tell some more truths about it, and and let us into the secrets of cycling, because he's the one who kind of brought it out. He had to bring it out to the because I don't know, he just couldn't carry on the way he was, you know.
Now, as a person like myself who doesn't know anything about the tour, because I like the fact that you did come up with a perspective of the support from the support writer, because no one ever remembers, you know, the second person in the race. But you know, like a person who, like myself, who doesn't know anything about cycling, we always think it's just a free-for-all. Whoever crosses the finish line wins. But I guess it's sort of like NASCAR, where you just actually have support vehicles just trying to block the wind or trying to make someone behind them faster, the lead racer. Yeah. Tell as a person, you know, you weren't into the tour yourself, but how did you go about figuring all this out yourself?
Well, you know, it's the idea of the idea of second fiddle. I mean, we've often seen lots and lots of sports movies about the guy who's going to win. I mean, and there's nothing more an audience can connect with than somebody who is not necessarily the underdog. Like right back from Rocky had a chance in hell of winning that fight, and he didn't win the fight by the end, but you felt like he won the fight. You know what I mean? You really kind of, because you were so on his side, and you knew it was an impossible task, but he'd done such a good job. You kind of felt like he'd won. And I like the idea of that with this film, because, you know, those guys get no glory. They get no kind of attention, really, Domestiques. And it was also, when I didn't really know much about cycling. When I first started working on this film, this is probably 8 years ago, I didn't really know that much about the system, how cycling works, how it's a team of domestiques circling around, worker bees circling around the queen bee and eventually letting her go and winning the stage. I didn't realize that myself. But when I started researching it, that's what I found fascinating. Because I was like yourself, 8 years ago, I just thought everybody gets on the bike and it's whoever's fastest. That's all it is. But it's far more sophisticated with that. And there's all sorts of little rules within cycling and honor. You know, it's honorable to, when somebody wants to go to the toilet, they all stop, kind of thing. You know, traditionally they all used to stop. Now there's people who've broken that rule since, and you know, it's probably not as honorable a sport as it used to be, but back in the old days, it was very honorable sport, you know. And there's a lot of culture and tradition there, and I just was fascinated with it. And I thought, I haven't seen this before. I haven't really, first of all, there aren't many cycling films. There's a few. There's like Breaking Away, which is kids' college cycling film, which was really terrific back in the day. But I don't really know many cycling films, so I just thought maybe it's time for a cycling movie, you know.
So tell me about the recreation of the cycling tour in Ireland. Obviously, you're talking to me from Ireland right now, so yeah. Filming in your backyard is very convenient. So talk about how you recreated, how close it was to the 1998 race that you had to recreate.
Well, I mean, obviously we were working on a budget, as you can imagine, right? And the budget of the Tour de France itself is enormous. Like it's enormous. They block all the streets out in the city center. You know, they have the police on their side. They have everything. We didn't have any of that kind of stuff. We got a couple of streets that we could block down for a Sunday afternoon. That was in the city center, and then some streets, some roads out in the countryside. We had a limited budget and we had a limited time frame. The entire film was filmed in 28 days, which is the shortest month of the year, if you think about it like that. It's February, right? You know, So it was a really, really difficult shoot. Really, really difficult to try and get the kind of level of to make it look like it was the Tour de France, right? And I think we also had the difficulty of it being a period film. It's in 1998, so things have changed quite a lot in Ireland, and quite a lot in everybody's world from 1998. There were very little mobile phones back then, so when you brought the crowds in, everybody had to put their mobile phone away, and they've always got a temptation to take out their mobile phone, extras do, so we had to implore them not to bring their mobile phones with them. They also had to dress differently, you know, they had to dress like they did in the 90s. So that and quite a bit of work in post-production, crowd duplication meant that we could do our best, give it our best shot with the Tour de France. Once you get out into the countryside, it's a little easier, because during the Tour de France, when they're out in the country roads, there aren't as many extras, there aren't as many fans along the side of the road. It's in the cities when they're coming in, that's when you need the big crowds, you know. So yeah, it was tough. It was tough, very tough, you know.
So you're saying you didn't bring hundreds of fans and hundreds of cyclists. It's all crowd duplication post effect.
No, we had. I think our largest amount in the peloton, the cyclists, we had 70, and we had in total at any one time we had 200 extras. So the rest were done in post production, duplicating them.
So when you're filming, was it there difficulties filming because you're filming during their movements? I mean, you obviously, you know, they're not stationary with, you know, CGI background. They're actually going through the city, going through the countryside in this case. Yes,
that's right. Yeah. So they had to, I mean, as actors, they had to imagine what it was like with like screaming crowds either side of the road. You know, I did explain to them that there'd be plenty of crowd duplication, and believe me, it will look full. And I think we succeeded there. So we had the CGI people on set the whole time, telling us what we need to cover so they can piece it together afterwards, you know. So yeah, it's with actors, they just have to, you know, block it all off and pretend they're there in the moment at the time, you know.
Let's talk about your leading man, Luis Talpe. How did you find him? Why is he perfect for the role?
Well, you know, the difficulty with casting this film is it. How do you say your name? Gig, is it?
Gig, yeah.
The difficulty with casting this film, Gig, is that I had to find really good actors, but also I had to find really good actors who are physically able for the part. You know, now most actors are quite fit. You know, they go to the gym and all that kind of stuff. But this is a different kind of fit we're talking here. This is like stamina. You know, it's not just looking like you've got abs and whatnot. This is stamina. And it's also not much body fat. So Louis is an actor who also happens to be an avid cyclist. And he's friends with professional cyclists and sometimes rides with professional cyclists just for fun. And he does Ironman, you know, the Ironman thing. He does Ironman as well, like, you know. So he's really quite a sportsman. He also happens to be a really good actor. So I got lucky. I really got lucky, and he couldn't believe that this film has come along to him because he's so into cycling. This is his dream project, you know. In Belgium, where he's from, cycling is the national sport of Belgium, believe it or not. It's not. It's even more so than in France. The real home of cycling is North Belgium. That's where the greatest cyclist came from. Eddy Merckx, he came from there. So this is where Louis is from. You know, so like everybody has a bike there. It's in their blood. So it was kind of like a next step for him. He couldn't believe it. He was so delighted to do it. And he lost an enormous amount of weight, and he lost an enormous amount of body fat in the lead up to the film. He went from 20% body fat to 7%.
Wow.
Yeah, and he really did it. You know, he really pushed himself. Matteo was the same. Matteo also, who plays Tartar, he lost a lot of weight as well. These guys, we put them in a boot camp for 10 days beforehand, trying to make sure that they get used to riding quite close to each other. That was the thing that was really nerve-wracking for them, because once if you tip somebody's front wheel or back wheel, you're gone. So they were really worried about cycling together, tight together, the way the peloton does. So that was that was what the boot camp was really for. And by the end of the boot camp, they were quite used to it. Although we did have an accident, a genuine accident that ended up in the film. The first of the crashes in the last stage, where the guy with the yellow jersey comes off. That's a real crash. 4 of them came off the bike and ended up in hospital for 2 or 3 days afterwards. Like, it was really quite serious, but they were okay. One of them broke a wrist. One of them cracked his cheek. Like, it was, you know, they did get injured really badly, but they were delighted that they went through all this and it didn't go in vain, that they ended up in the movie. So I asked them, could I put that in the movie? And they were like, yeah, please do, you know. And the second crash was faked. We put together ourselves, you know.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's a dangerous shooting bikes, you know. And I'd never filmed bikes before. I'd never shot them before, you know. I remember hearing stories about people talking about shooting horses, because horses are big, you know, and how do you shoot horses, you know? And when they were making westerns, it didn't seem to be, they were used to it. But now people go and shoot because they're so big and they're so, you don't know what they're going to do. At least with a bike, you know what it's going to do, you know. But with a horse, you don't know what it's going to do. So I kind of compared it to that. You just have to get used to how to film bikes, you know.
I'm fascinated. I mean, there's so many challenges and difficulties on a project like this, but that also explains why you kind of zoomed in and focused into you know, Luis's muscles and toned armed and legs, because when I actually saw that, I was like going, gosh, you know, these cyclist bodies, they're way different from any other athlete out there.
Yeah, physically they are. There's nothing to compare them. Like, they really don't have any flesh on their bones at all. Like, you know, and I think that it's almost perverse actually what they do to their bodies. You know what I mean? There is no other sport that is that extreme, an extreme effect on your diet, on your physicality, on everything. I think it's the only sport that has that. You know. And it hadn't really, and also even the tan lines, you know, the tan lines where, you know, they all have they're all tan from there down, and then from there up they're white, you know what I mean, most of them. And that's very particular to cycling. I mean, it's so much so that there are some amateur groups that actually go into the tanning salons, like, you know, and get fake tan and make it look like they've been out in the sun, you know, cycling, and then the rest of it's white. You know, it's become a trend, you know what I mean?
Wow. One of the actors you brought in was Ian Glenn, and he has one of the most recognizable faces in, you know, in this industry, and I loved him in his role as, you know, the sort of like the support coach in the film. Talk about bringing him onto this project.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, I was blessed that Ian liked the script and liked the character. Ian's from Scotland. So, and he rarely gets to act with his Scottish accent. Rarely. He's always kind of sounds like he does in Game of Thrones or whatever. You know, he's always got that quite, you know, non-specific English accent. But finally, he could get to do Scottish again, playing somebody from Glasgow. And I think he relished that. And I think he kind of liked the idea of, you know, Sonny almost plays Dom's dad. You know, it's his surrogate father. You know what I mean? Or his older brother or uncle or something like that, you know, and because we never meet Dom's family, and he doesn't meet his family. So this is his new family, and this is his new dad or his new brother or his new uncle. And I think Ian really relished that thought, you know, as well. Thought the idea of the relationship was very interesting. And he hadn't seen anything like that before. The relationship within sport and how dependent they are on each other. That's the other thing that he was fascinated by. Each individual in these teams are so dependent on each other. You know, Dom is dependent on Sonny for massaging him really and providing his drugs. But like the masseur aspect of things is very, very important in cycling. You always have to have a soigneur to look after you, because otherwise you'll just cramp up. You know. And then Dom is his charge is Tartar. He's got to look after Tartar. He's got to put him to bed at night, you know, because he's has panic attacks, you know. And they're all so connected to each other. But yet, when push comes to shove, they're dispensable. You know, when Sonny dies, they just move on. You know, when Dom gets too old, it's like, I'm sorry, mate, that's it, you're done. And that's kind of, it's cruel. It's a cruel sport, you know. It's a cruel sport, you know.
It is.
I think Ian thought that was quite fascinating.
Hey, talk about finding the rest of the cast, because I noticed that everyone, you had to basically create sort of like this international feel of all the different cyclists from different countries and all that kind of stuff. Were there all British casts, or did you really have to bring in international actors?
Well, actually, you know, there was no pressure to cast, you know, from each of the countries or anything like that. But like the teams in the Tour de France are made up of people mostly from other countries in Europe, but also like some Americans and Australians get in there as well. the team itself that we had, Team Estranged, are a French team, but Dom is Belgian, and Matteo's Italian, and they were written that way. And Sonny was written as a Glaswegian. All of the other characters written as German or New Zealand or whatever. They were all written that way. So I pieced it together like that. Viking, who's the manager, the coach. He was written originally with the name Viking as a Scandinavian, but actually I found that actor, and he's from the Czech Republic. But you know, giving him a name Viking doesn't make any difference. So I was really keen to have lots and lots of different nationalities from around Europe, and also lots of language. There's some French in the film, there's English in the film, there's Irish language, Gaelic language in the film, there's Italian in the film, there's Czech in the film. So there's a variety of Flemish, Dutch in the film. So I was really into the idea of having lots of different languages in one film, and how they could move from language to language, which is a very European thing. I was quite interested in portraying that because I haven't seen that before.
I think you did pretty good. I thought this was probably one of the most realistic international sports movies that I've watched. Well, let me start wrapping things up. I know it's a silly question to ask of what's going on worldwide, but how are you keeping sane and creative during times like this?
Good question. Well, you know, obviously, recently I've been spending time doing things like this, trying to promote the film as best I can. You know what I mean? I'm also working with another writer, and he's in the UK and I'm here in Dublin, and I have Skype chats, and we go through work that he's done and discuss stuff that he's done like that. I also have my own home cinema here in the background. You can probably see it. Yes, yeah. So I spend an unhealthy amount of time here inside when I could be outside in the sunshine. But so I'm watching stuff, rewatching old movies, watching new ones, watching television and stuff like that. And you know, really, it's because it's been an intense 2 years making this film. We finished the film, like actually the sound mix and everything was finished on the film on the 6th of March. Oh. And we were due to fly out to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest, which was going to be screening on Friday, the 13th of March. And on the night of the 6th, after the mix, we were having a glass of champagne in the studio, and the email came through, sorry guys, we've had to cancel. And it was the first film festival to cancel. So basically, two or 3 years prior to that, I'd been working on this intensely. So when we went into lockdown, it was kind of like, it was very disappointing, but it was almost like time to recharge the batteries and just calm down a bit, because it was so intense for so long. And I was doing a lot of the work abroad. I was in Belgium and in Luxembourg as well. And I came home and I could just relax for 3 months, which was quite nice. But now I'm getting restless, and now I need to get going again. So I'm working with this writer in the UK, and hoping to put something together for like next summer.
Excellent. And one more thing before I let you go. After doing a film like this, can you consider yourself now a fan of cycling, or do you still kind of neutral about it?
No, I'm very much, I think my appreciation for cycling and my appreciation for what these guys do is really risen. And I quite like watching cycling on television now. I really do quite like, and I didn't before. I remember doing some research about sports movies, and I remember reading about Martin Scorsese when he was bullied into making Raging Bull by Robert De Niro. Like literally, he was like, I don't like boxing. I don't like boxing at all. Why would I do that? I hate sports. Anything with a ball, I'm not interested, you know? And De Niro said, look, you know, don't think of it like a sports film. Just think of it like a story about a guy who's fighting more with his wife and his brother than he is in the ring. How about that? And he said, okay, I could deal with that. Fighting in your life, yeah, I can understand that. So that's what he got him into it. And in a way, that was me. I wasn't that much of a fan of sport or cycling, but I was really interested in the character of a domestique in this team. I was really interested in a man who's satisfied with being second best for the whole of his life. I found that fascinating. But now, having done a lot of research and watched a lot of the sport, I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy watching it now.
I love your I especially love the fact that you made a drama out of this sports. You know, it could have easily been a boring movie, but it captivated me for more than an hour and a half. So hey, thank you very much.
Great to hear, Gig. And one of the most important things for me was that the film is not for cyclists, not exclusively for cyclists. It's for film for people who don't really know anything about cycling. And so I went to pains to try and get the main character to explain his job and why he wasn't supposed to win, why he was a support rider, and block the wind and all that. Now that was important that be explained. And you see a lot of behind the scenes of cycling rather than cycling itself. And I thought that might make the people who don't really know much about cycling or don't care about it still interested in the film.
I think it worked. As a non-cycling person like myself, I was enthralled by it. Hey, thank you very much for speaking with me, and hopefully, in 2 years, everything will be back to normal, and we could do this in a normal interview.
Absolutely, that sounds like a great idea. What part of America are you in?
I'm in California.
You're in California, right? Whereabouts in California?
I'm actually in Fresno. I'm right in the middle of California. So behind me,
Fresno. I know Fresno.
I'm about 30 minutes away from an area called Yosemite.
Oh, nice. Lovely there. Very nice. Yeah. Beautiful. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the other thing about this whole lockdown. Like, I would have gone to South by Southwest, but I would have gone out to California, to Los Angeles, and gone round the rounds with the film and all that. Wow. Life stuff, huh?
You'll bring around a bigger and better movie. That's all we know, right?
Thank you. That's good to hear. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay.
Hey, thank you. Bye now.
Bye now. Bye.